Welcome to Zodiac Talks Tarot, where we speak astrology in plain American English and still honor the mystery in the margins. Think coffee-fueled research meets moonlit intuition. I'm your longtime guide, part astrologer, part social psychologist, part literary busybody who reads the birth chart like a biography and the headlines like a collective horoscope. And today we're opening the door for Sagittarius on October 28, 2025. With a story that sounds dramatic because it is. A deceased man leaves you an inheritance. Now, before anyone bolts to check a dusty safety deposit box or text that relative who only calls on holidays, let's define our terms like grown ups who've done the work. Inheritance can be money, sure, but it can also be the emotional equity you've been quietly paying into for years, the dividends of integrity, the interest on courage, the accrued value of all the times you chose truth over convenience. Sagittarius, you're the zodiac's frontier scholar, the one who packs a philosophical backpack and leaves the familiar at dawn, not because you dislike home but because you're allergic to smallness. You collect ideas the way tourists collect magnets, and you have a talent for saying the one sentence in a crowded room that opens a window no one noticed was painted shut. The price of that gift, as you know too well, is a peculiar loneliness. You tell a joke to soften the brilliance and watch people laugh while missing the sermon folded inside the laugh. You've promised yourself a dozen times not to go so deep, to keep it light, and yet your nature doesn't do shallow. When your arrow flies, it hunts meaning. Here's the good news, cosmically speaking, inheritance is already en route, and it's stamped with your name and a note that reads, "For services rendered in the pursuit of truth." Some of you will hear about literal assets, support for study or travel, a contract, a property, a grant that finally aligns with your mission. Many more will receive a subtler check, a person arrives who speaks your inner dialect without subtitles, a mentor's teaching resurfaces precisely when you're ready, or a door opens because you've been quietly showing up with excellence long after applause left the building. Consider this the karmic executor finalizing paperwork you forgot you filed. The deceased man here may be an ancestor, yes, but he might also be the former self you outgrew, the version of you who kept shrinking to fit rooms that secretly wanted your light but not your wattage. In Buddhist language, that self has completed a cycle. Its passing frees you from a clinging story, I must be smaller to be loved. Not anymore. Today's chart whispers a different koan, be fully yourself and let what cannot stand your sunlight politely step back into the shade. Psychologically, we're talking earned security, the slow, consistent trust that comes when words and behavior finally match, in you and in others. Socially, expect your circle to shift as your standards stop negotiating with scarcity. You'll notice it in conversations that end with oxygen rather than exhaustion. And because I promised you humor with your wisdom, if the universe does hand you an envelope, open it. If it hands you a metaphor, open that too. If it hands you both, sit down first. Your job isn't to prove you deserve what arrives. Your job is to steward it with the same fierce sincerity that brought it to your doorstep. Sagittarius, you aren't just lucky, you're rigorous about meaning, and luck loves a prepared mind. So today, take the call, read the email, answer the quiet nudge. If someone steps into your life and you feel your ribcage expand instead of contract, that's your tell. If your laughter returns from deep in the belly, the place where courage lives, you'll know you've crossed a threshold. Welcome to Zodiac Talks Tarot. Grab your map and your sense of humor. The universe is knocking loudly enough to be heard over the coffee machine, and this time, it's not selling you anything. It's handing you back what has always been yours. When the moon positions itself delicately between Libra's craving for harmony and Taurus's appetite for substance, something intriguing stirs in the cosmic paperwork department. You, Sagittarius, have just been signed onto a universal contract you didn't even know existed. Picture the universe as an ancient notary, stamping its seal beside your name with that amused smile of someone who has been waiting centuries for you to stop second-guessing your own brilliance. The so-called deceased man mentioned here might not be someone from a genealogy chart but a ghost of identity, an older version of yourself who spent years apologizing for being too curious, too honest, too alive. That self has finally been laid to rest, and in its will, it leaves you the priceless assets of courage, authenticity, and unapologetic presence. What you inherit is not cash or real estate but something far more volatile: permission. Permission to breathe louder, dream bigger, take up spiritual square footage. You, Sagittarius, are a walking bonfire in a world that keeps handing out smoke detectors and safety pamphlets. For years, you've toned yourself down, dimmed your philosophical glow to keep from setting off alarms in fragile egos. But the cosmic executor, the grand administrator of karmic estates, has now declared that era closed. The chosen ones among you, those who've secretly felt destined for something larger than predictability, are being asked to turn the dimmer all the way up. The year of triumph 2025 doesn't request modest wattage, it demands full luminescence. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. Of course, the moment you begin to glow at full voltage, the familiar whisper returns: you're too much. Too intense, too blunt, too philosophical, too optimistic, the four horsemen of every Sagittarius critique. Society wants your fire when it's cold but blames you for the burn when things heat up. When it craves vision, you're a leader. When it craves obedience, you're a problem. After decades of riding that emotional seesaw, you've finally learned that the balance was never about you, it was about other people's fear of light. Psychologically speaking, Sagittarians live at the frontier of human awareness. You are ruled by Jupiter, planet of expansion, meaning you're genetically wired to overdo everything: ideas, laughter, generosity, opinions, snacks. The task isn't to shrink, it's to learn where your magnitude is invited versus merely endured. The cosmic inheritance now arriving delivers discernment as currency. You'll begin to see, with almost X-ray precision, who genuinely listens and who just waits for your breath to refill so they can talk. You'll sense which rooms amplify you and which ones siphon your spark. This is also a deeply Buddhist moment in your growth arc. You're learning the art of non-grasping, of not begging the world to validate your existence. Impermanence becomes your ally, not your enemy. Even rejection, when met with awareness, loses its sting. You nod, bow, and move on, a little wiser, a little freer. And because humor is still your best armor, you might as well keep laughing at it all. You, after all, are the only sign that could get ghosted and still send the ghost a thank you card for the enlightenment. Dear apparition, you'd write, "Thank you for teaching me detachment faster than any retreat ever could." Only a Sagittarius could make spiritual growth sound like stand-up comedy. And just when you start to think this whole story is about independence and solo heroism, the plot flips. Somewhere in your immediate timeline walks another traveler, a mirror soul, not here to manage your fire but to mirror it back so you can see how radiant you truly are. They won't arrive with cinematic fanfare but with something quieter and infinitely more trustworthy: recognition. You'll know them by the way your body relaxes. The mind stops auditioning, the heart stops editing. Around them, you don't have to translate your humor or explain why the sky at dusk makes you emotional. It just does, and they get it. This person, let's call them your cosmic co-heir, will not be intimidated by your intellect or ambitions. They've got their own lantern, and it burns just as bright. Together you form a partnership that doesn't compete for oxygen, it expands it. Astrologically, Jupiter, your ruling planet, and Venus are in a benevolent conversation right now, blessing all relationships rooted in shared growth rather than dependency. Think of it less as the universe playing matchmaker for romance and more as matchmaking for resonance. You may cross paths through an educational pursuit, a creative collaboration, or a conversation so intellectually alive that the air itself seems to sparkle. Here's the cosmic punchline: they might initially roll their eyes at astrology, claiming they don't believe in that stuff, yet 2 days later they casually mention your rising sign. That's how fate flirts, deadpan, ironic, perfectly timed. This connection will feel both ancient and refreshingly new, as if your separate journeys were always two halves of a larger map finally aligning. They'll challenge you, not by contradicting your beliefs, but by living in such a way that you must keep growing to keep pace. In their company, your fire becomes steadier, less about spectacle and more about warmth. You won't lose independence, you'll redefine it. Together, you'll learn that freedom and devotion aren't opposites, they're dance partners. Psychologically, they'll help repair the mistrust that grew after years of being misunderstood. Spiritually, they'll remind you that enlightenment doesn't have to happen alone on a mountain. Sometimes it happens across a kitchen table, mid-conversation, between bites of something slightly overcooked but made with intention. So, Sagittarius, the cosmic executor has indeed spoken, and the terms are generous. You inherit the right to be unapologetically alive, the discernment to know where your light belongs, and perhaps, if you're brave enough to open the door, a companion whose presence proves that true connection doesn't shrink you, it scales you to your rightful size. You've spent a lifetime thinking the world was too small for your vision. Turns out, the world was simply waiting for you to stop negotiating your brilliance. The papers are signed, the will has been read, and the universe has handed you the keys. Don't file them away, start the engine. The road ahead glows, and this time, you won't have to travel it alone. Let's be honest, Sagittarius, skepticism has become your default setting. You've heard too many promises that came with fine print, too many forevers that expired before the next moon cycle. Every new declaration of loyalty now sounds suspiciously like a marketing slogan, and you can't help but scan for the emotional catch. You've been the motivational speaker in relationships where the audience refused to get out of bed. You've poured gallons of optimism into half-empty cups, and no matter how you refilled them, they always seemed to leak. Eventually, even the best archer stops shooting when every arrow lands in a wall. It's not bitterness, it's data collection. You've learned through experience that not everyone can handle your brand of hope. But here's the plot twist: this new connection, the one hovering at the edges of your life right now, doesn't need saving. They don't interpret your enthusiasm as naivete or your faith as foolishness. They come with no agenda to fix or control you. They simply sit beside your well-fortified heart and start removing the bricks, not by force, but by warmth. You almost don't notice it happening at first. There's no big revelation, no cinematic crescendo. Just a growing ease, a quiet recognition that your walls no longer serve you. Psychologists call this earned security, the slow rebuilding of trust through consistent, observable action rather than promises. Spiritually, it's karma's way of saying, you've done the homework, now here's your upgrade. It's as if the universe finally decided that all those lonely nights of self-reflection, all the times you chose integrity over instant gratification, have matured into something solid. You've earned your PhD in discernment, and now you're ready for love or connection of any kind that doesn't feel like work. When you're truly seen, Sagittarius, something beautiful happens, laughter returns. Not the polite chuckle you use at social events to lubricate conversation, but the kind of laugh that sneaks up from your gut and shakes the air. The kind that startles birds and resets your nervous system. This person, or this new phase of your journey, will remind you of that. They'll tease your seriousness, poke fun at your habit of turning every conversation into a philosophical TED Talk, and instead of feeling insulted, you'll find yourself grinning. Because deep down, humor is your secret dialect with the divine. It's how you flirt with existence. You've always believed that joy and wisdom should walk hand in hand, and when they don't, enlightenment starts to look suspiciously like homework. Expect spontaneous adventures, roadside diners that serve terrible coffee but excellent conversation, and long talks about why humans are so terrified of their own happiness. Expect to rediscover fun as a spiritual discipline, the way children instinctively live before adults convince them that seriousness equals depth. You'll remember that play isn't a distraction from enlightenment, it's often the doorway into it. And then, as life tends to do, it gets deeper. The Buddhist whisper enters the room, subtle yet profound, perhaps that deceased man in your horoscope was never a person at all. Perhaps it was the ego self, that inner worker bee who believed that love had to be earned, that worth depended on output. That version of you has died a quiet, dignified death. Its funeral was attended by your awareness and officiated by silence. What remains is an inheritance of freedom. You are enough, even when you're not inspiring anyone. You, the eternal teacher, are finally learning the lesson you've taught others for years, that presence alone is valuable. The chosen ones among you, the Sagittarians who feel marked by a bigger purpose, often confuse service with self-worth. You fund other people's dreams, write their roadmaps, and hand them courage on discount, but forget to restock your own supply. The year of triumph 2025 arrives like cosmic permission to stop apologizing for needing care. To let others give to you without guilt. To receive teaching, affection, and generosity with the same open arms you've extended to the world. This isn't selfishness, it's equilibrium. It's the middle way the Buddha described, neither indulgence nor deprivation, but balance. Give deeply, yes, but let yourself be given to. Now let's turn practical for a moment, because Sagittarius loves a blend of the mystical and the measurable. How do you recognize what's genuine amid the noise of spiritual spam? Watch the energy, not the vocabulary. The aligned ones will expand your breath, the misaligned will subtly compress it. After a conversation, do you feel inspired or slightly deflated? Do your shoulders drop or tighten? Your body is your truest oracle, your most accurate divination tool. No tarot card can outread your own nervous system. In the weeks ahead, as Mercury travels through Scorpio, your intuition sharpens to surgical precision. You'll pick up authenticity not through words but through vibration. Trust that. Don't let logic bully intuition into silence, it's the one language the soul speaks fluently. And if someone from the past reappears, claiming they've changed, don't rush to judgment, but don't hand over the keys, either. Observe patterns, not promises. The right person won't need a rebrand, their consistency will prove their evolution. Real transformation doesn't announce itself, it shows up on time, listens fully, and keeps showing up. Sagittarius, this stretch of your life is about learning the art of relaxed trust. You don't need to scan for danger or rehearse your defenses anymore. The people meant for you will not demand smaller versions of you. They'll meet your fire with steadiness, not suppression. The joy of being seen without translation, of laughing without permission, of receiving without debt, that's your inheritance now. You are, at last, allowed to believe again, but this time, your belief won't be naive, it will be seasoned. It will have laugh lines, stretch marks, and a sense of humor. It will know that faith and wisdom can share the same body. So breathe. The universe isn't trying to sell you anything. It's offering a refund for everything you once gave to the wrong hands, and a reminder that the most reliable investment is still love, when it starts from you. Sagittarius, let's start with a confession. Freedom is not just something you value, it's practically your religion. You treat it like oxygen, and the mere idea of losing it can make you hold your breath. For years, you've equated love with limitation, as though affection comes with a set of invisible handcuffs and a curfew. You've mastered the art of the strategic escape, one foot in, one eye on the exit. Yet life, with its twisted sense of humor, has decided it's time for you to graduate from that old curriculum. The universe, it seems, has a paradox. It wants to teach you a version of love that expands your freedom rather than shrinks it. This next chapter doesn't involve someone who wants to tie you down. In fact, they might be the first person who hands you a boarding pass instead of a guilt trip. They'll help you pack, remind you to bring your charger, and laugh as they tell you, "Text me when you land, just so I know you're still alive." Because to them, loyalty isn't measured by how close they can keep you, it's by how much they respect the horizon that keeps calling your name. From a psychological standpoint, this is no small shift. It rewires your entire attachment blueprint. You're used to relating from a place of caution, anticipating that closeness will cost you independence. But this person or this lesson shows you that true partnership is not a form of possession, it's co-piloting. Two autonomous beings navigating the same sky, each steering their own vessel, yet sharing direction, purpose, and trust. Spiritually, this is an initiation. You're being invited to redefine what commitment means for a soul that thrives in motion. Commitment isn't about confinement, it's about presence. It's about knowing someone can hold space for you without holding you hostage. And yes, you might still panic occasionally. Old habits die hard. You'll feel the urge to run, to test the boundaries, to confirm that you're still free. But each time, you'll realize that this love isn't closing in on you, it's widening your world. Now, let's talk about the hallmarks of this new inheritance, the ones that mark real partnership from cosmic pretense. First comes safety, the kind where you can voice your biggest, weirdest dreams without needing to translate them into something palatable. You can say, "I think I'm meant to write a philosophy book set in space," and instead of an eye roll, you'll get, "Cool, do you need help designing the cover?" That's the emotional equivalent of breathing fresh mountain air. Second is loyalty, but not the Instagrammable kind. This is the quiet, consistent loyalty that shows up when life isn't photogenic. The kind that remembers your favorite tea when you're sick and doesn't vanish when the plot gets heavy. Third, challenge. They won't flatter you into stagnation, they'll nudge you toward the next evolution of yourself. They'll push you, not for control, but for expansion. Fourth is humor. This person will make philosophy fun again, and you'll realize that laughter is just higher consciousness with a punchline. And finally, balance, the rarest of all. You'll shine brightly, and they won't flinch or compete, they'll shine alongside you. None of this is fantasy, it's design. Divine design, if you will. Jupiter, your ruling planet, doesn't reward perfection, it rewards honesty, the courage to stay authentic even when it makes others uncomfortable. You've done that. You've stayed true, even when mocked for it, and now the universe is ready to trust you with the next level of connection, the kind that's earned, not borrowed. This is what happens when you stop chasing validation and start radiating your truth unapologetically. The people who belong in your life start finding you like constellations aligning out of chaos. When this new energy settles into your orbit, your outer world will start to mirror the shift. Friends may comment that you look different, lighter, perhaps, as if you swapped caffeine for clarity. That's what happens when tension leaves the shoulders of the soul. You'll catch yourself laughing at old triggers that used to ruin your day. You'll forgive not because the other person suddenly became saintly, but because you simply don't have the time or emotional real estate to carry resentment anymore. The beauty of genuine companionship is that it restores your faith not just in others but in yourself. And here's the cosmic joke: once you stop hunting for meaning, meaning starts hunting for you. The projects that stalled begin to flow. The financial knots untangle. Even your sleep improves. That's how energy behaves when resistance dissolves. It's like discovering that abundance was never hiding, it was waiting for you to stop sprinting past it. Now, allow me a personal observation from decades of studying both astrology and the absurdity of human timing. Destiny has an impeccable sense of humor. It tends to deliver life-changing people at the exact moment you've sworn off humanity. The minute you proclaim, "I'm done with relationships, I'm adopting a cat and learning pottery," the universe rubs its hands together and says, "Perfect, now you're ready." That's the paradox of growth. It arrives precisely when you think you've outgrown it. So if you've recently deleted your dating apps, moved to a new city to focus on yourself, or built a new philosophy around solitude, don't be shocked when fate pulls up a chair next to you on a flight or sends a misdelivered text that turns into a 3-hour conversation about consciousness and tacos. The cosmos loves irony almost as much as it loves you, Sagittarius. What makes all of this work is that you're finally meeting the universe halfway. For once, you're not chasing or avoiding, you're simply open. You're beginning to understand that freedom and love were never opposites, they've just been waiting to be properly introduced. This is the stage in your evolution where you realize that commitment isn't a cage but a dance floor, one big enough for both of you to move in rhythm, without stepping on each other's toes. You'll still take solo trips, still wander off into the wild corners of philosophy, still question everything, but now, you'll have someone who doesn't just tolerate that journey. They'll pack snacks, hold the map, and remind you that even explorers need a home base. And here's the most delightful part, through all of it, laughter remains your compass. It's your proof that the soul is thriving. Whenever life feels heavy, humor will come knocking, whispering that you can be wise without being weary. You've always been the philosopher of the zodiac, Sagittarius, but now you get to be the philosopher who laughs, who loves without losing altitude. This is your inheritance, partnership that liberates, faith that relaxes, and joy that doesn't need a reason. You've done the inner work, now the universe, with its characteristic mischief, rewards you not with stillness, but with movement that finally feels like home. Here's your assignment for today, Sagittarius, not homework, but something more sacred, more mischievously powerful. Open your journal, the one where your deepest thoughts live alongside half-baked travel plans, and write this sentence with intention: I am an adventurous Sagittarius, and I deserve connections that honor my truth, my freedom, and my joy. Don't write it for social media validation or as a performative mantra. Write it because words shape vibration, and vibration shapes reality. In astrology, language is spell work. Every sentence you commit to paper becomes an energetic signature, and today, that signature finalizes your side of a cosmic agreement. The universe already signed its part in stardust. By writing it down, you're not asking for permission, you're reclaiming ownership of the life you were always meant to live. Now, let's widen the lens. This isn't just about romance or friendship. The message of inheritance extends far beyond the heart into the realm of vocation, purpose, and prosperity. For some Sagittarians, this may literally manifest as financial inheritance, news about property, educational funding, or unexpected support that expands your world. If that happens, say thank you, but don't stop there. Ask the question every spiritually awake Sagittarius should ask: what lesson travels with this gift? Because in cosmic economics, every blessing comes with curriculum. For many others, the inheritance will appear as recognition, a project finally receiving its due attention, a truth you've long carried now validated publicly, or an opportunity that funds your mission. This is Jupiter's handiwork in full display. And since Jupiter is your planetary patron saint, its blessings often arrive wrapped in humor. It might look like luck, but it's actually divine timing intersecting with your persistence. The year of triumph 2025 is Jupiter's open tab at the cosmic bar, but there's a catch: you must believe you're worthy of abundance that doesn't require exhaustion as proof. You've been conditioned to equate effort with suffering, as though only pain authenticates progress. But the deeper teaching here, both psychological and spiritual, is that success can be serene. Effort doesn't have to feel like warfare. The so-called deceased man in this narrative may well be that old version of you who worships struggle as identity. His passing marks the birth of ease, of a wiser kind of ambition, one that flows rather than fights. This is the year when you stop mistaking friction for growth. You'll still aim high, of course you Sagittarius, but now your arrows are guided by alignment, not adrenaline. As someone who has spent decades studying Sagittarius energy, I can tell you that your soul was not designed for exile. You were born for expansion, not loneliness. Yes, you need movement, independence, and wide horizons, but you were never meant to wander the world like a tragic philosopher in search of meaning that always hovers one step ahead. Your path, while solitary at times, ultimately leads to connection with equals, not dependence. You're destined to find those rare torchbearers who match your fire, who walk beside you not as admirers but as co-creators of something luminous. When these people appear, don't meet them with suspicion. Meet them with patience. Real souls don't rush, they orbit. They return, consistently, until trust becomes instinctive. And so I say to you, breathe, Archer. You've spent years with your bow drawn tight, heart steady, eyes fixed on a distant future. The universe is whispering now, it's time to release. Let the arrow fly. The motion itself is your inheritance, the permission to live, love, and laugh without apology. You don't need to justify your joy or dim your enthusiasm to fit smaller narratives. The point of all this growth, all these lessons, isn't to make you tame, it's to make you free with purpose. Here's the cosmic punchline, the one destiny has been setting up since the first act. Maybe the deceased man in your horoscope isn't a literal figure at all. Maybe he's the outdated version of you who kept chasing validation instead of inhabiting truth. That part of you has served its purpose and now passes the torch. He leaves behind everything you actually need, wisdom that doesn't waver, courage that doesn't brag, and a cosmic savings account overflowing with potential. The universe is generous, but it's practical too. It expects you to circulate the energy. Don't hoard the fire. Share it. Because the world, let's face it, has grown cold, cynical, and a little too ironic for its own good. You, Sagittarius, are one of its chosen heaters, part philosopher, part flame keeper. So go live. Say yes to the absurd adventures, to laughter that hurts your ribs, to love that expands instead of confines. Write, teach, travel, dance under neon skies, and make eye contact with strangers who feel like déjà vu. You are the proof that joy is a form of intelligence. You are the reminder that freedom and faith can coexist. Welcome to your inheritance, chosen one. Welcome to your year of triumph 2025. And before you head out on your next journey, do one last thing for the sake of the cosmic algorithm: like, share, and subscribe to Zodiac Talks Tarot. Because while destiny may be written in the stars, understanding it is much more fun when we read it together.